Hey everyone, this is Hurls, and joining me tonight is Impact Dude. And we are bringing you a new special podcast. There's been so many different wrestlers that have wrestled for TNA and Impact Wrestling. And I think sometimes we lose what made TNA and Impact great. Well, this podcast is going to be about those wrestlers who made TNA and Impact great, but are no longer in TNA or Impact. And this podcast is something that I wanted to do to kind of give back to the history of Impact and what made it so special. So our first guest tonight is going to be Marshe Rockett, guy that came in 6'4", 260 pounds. I mean, how could you go wrong with that kind of body, you know? I mean, just a really strong wrestler that was put in the X division, surprisingly. But I can't wait to ask him why he was put in the X division. There's a lot of questions I have working with Billy Corgan to working with the talent around that time. And what was all the different management changes that went around? There's so many good questions that I want to ask. Impact Dude, I'm sure you have a ton of questions as well.
I do, and I got to tell you something, Hurls. The number one thing I want to find out from this guy is what's it like to be on the receiving end of a Canadian destroyer. Okay, we're talking Marshe Rockett here, folks. We're talking 6'4". We're talking 260 pounds. We are talking a huge man. We're talking about a guy that rivals Killer Kross. We're talking about somebody that can fly in the ring. And Hurls, that's why they put him in the X division, because this man can wrestle. Okay, so we're talking about a tremendous amount of talent brought into Impact Wrestling, really started to get a good push, and then with all the transitions going on at the time, and let's face it, Hurls, there's been a lot of transitions in Impact Wrestling a lot of different times, but this one was the biggest one. I think his push gets lost in the shuffle, and what I'd like to hear is what was it like for Marshe Rockett to be a part of Impact Wrestling? What was Marshe Rockett's impact on Impact Wrestling?
And that's what this show is called, My Impact, because it's exactly that. What is the impact that Marshe Rockett left? And that's what this podcast is going to be all about. It's going to be different guests joining us. Maybe not every week, but at least once a month, we're going to have a new guest that used to be in Impact TNA Wrestling. And that's, I think, what we want. We want to hear their story on what went down the time that they were there. And sure, we'll get to hear some other parts of their wrestling career, and that's fine. But it's all going to lead to Impact and what happened when they were in Impact. So Marshe has a great story to be told, and without further ado, let's bring Marshe Rockett on. All right, Marshe Rockett is with us today. Marshe, how you doing?
I am doing a little bit tired, but you know, but hey, when you tag your nine with all day, you're expected to go all day. So let's do this thing, man. I'm ready. Let's get it.
See, I think you should have been all day and all night. That's what I think you should have been.
Yeah, but you know that I don't know. Everybody's tagging themselves these days with all day. So, but I probably should have been all night. But you know. Is what it is. All day just has a better ring to it, though.
It does, doesn't it?
It's just, you know, Marshe all night is like,
I think all day and all night. Like, you're going 24/7, buddy.
Yeah, but you got to keep in mind, too, I'm in the ring with dudes, so saying all night with, you know, wrestling other guys. Like, yeah, what message are we really trying to send here?
Don't want to send the wrong signal, that's for sure.
Not trying to tempt anybody over here.
All right, so Marshe, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago. Been here my entire life, and now I'm just sort of residing out in like the suburbs and whatnot. But still doing all of my travels throughout the Midwest. I guess you can say the Midwest is my actual home base. That's where most of my wrestling promotions that I work for take place, and then just now expanding Trying to expand my brand, trying to get more so over the East Coast and to the West Coast. But Chicago's home for me, so that's where I will continue to stay unless something drastically changes. But until that time, Chicago's my home base.
Love it. I'm from Milwaukee, so I know all about the Midwest. It's got a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't handle the winters," but you kind of appreciate the changing of the seasons.
You do until it's supposed to be springtime, and you're looking forward to that 55 degrees, and you wake up in the morning, and you see there's 2 inches of snow on the ground in April. Then you start to contemplate what in the hell is going on.
Yeah, no doubt. Just like today, obviously.
Oh, God. This is terrible. This is the worst. It was the worst waking up feeling in the world. It's like 55 yesterday, and now today it's 40 and it's snowing.
We're back to winter.
And then that's when you're just like, why do I live in the Midwest? It does, but it offers clarification. It makes you think about life. It makes you think about where you want to be. So I want to be someplace warm. So I'm going to work twice as hard to make that happen.
I totally understand that. I got to go down to Florida every March or early April just to get away.
Yes.
So I know how that goes. So what was your first, I guess, watching wrestling? Like, how old were you, and what was the first memory that you had?
Well, most wrestlers that I talked to over the years, and some that have like legends and stuff, everybody seems like they started super young, like 2 or 3. I had like late start. My love for wrestling actually started when I was about 10 years old. So, and when I started watching wrestling, I was huge into like Razor Ramon. Like I do remember going around creating my own little vest out of my shirt, which my mom could not stand because every new shirt she got me, I found some way to make it into a vest. And I would walk around with a toothpick and just annoying everybody, saying, "Hey, yo," just doing the whole Razor Ramon gimmick. But the wrestler that made me want to really get into the business was watching Stone Cold Steve Austin, and just falling in love with his character, and watching him go out there, do his thing, giving stunners, flipping people off, letting them know exactly what he thought of them, and wasn't sorry for it. He's like, it is what it is, take it or leave it, and just like, man, that just falling in love with that character, saying like, man, I wish I could do that. Just tell people what it is what it is, and that's the bottom line, because Marshe said so. And then I was like, I want to do that. I want to be a part of that world. Let's make that happen. So.
Well, Marshe, you speak for a lot of us when you say that you want to be that guy, because I think that everybody that ever watched Stone Cold Steve Austin wanted to be that guy. The guy just didn't give a shit. F you, up yours, I'm going to stun you, But
yeah,
how did you actually go? What made you actually think, you know what, I'm actually going to be that guy? And then how did you transition into actually doing it? Because I think that's where most of us just kind of stopped. Right, we had this love affair with being like him, but we never actually followed through with it. Just walk us through that process.
Well, so I'm at the stage where I see it on television, but like you said, it's different watching it than actually having the idea of actually pursuing it. Growing up, my dad always would ask me and my brothers, what do we want to be when we wanted to grow up? My brothers would mention, the typical cop or police, the fireman, the doctor. I think my oldest brother said he wanted to be the governor. We all had a good laugh at that one. I I always went back to doing something in entertainment. I remember telling my dad I wanted to be a film director, or I wanted to go into acting. And, you know, I sat up there and I would try to do like plays, and he would come to it or something, but, he didn't, he saw that there was an interest there, but I guess it wasn't like passion, you know. But as an outsider looking in, I guess he could just always tell, dads just always know. But I do remember there was like a WWE pay-per-view, SummerSlam. It was like Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio. I was super into that match because they had such a great rivalry going in. So I begged my parents to like let me watch, like order that pay-per-view because I wanted to see it. And I just remember during like one of their like commercial breaks, my dad comes in, sits down next to me. He's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you real quick. Just like, sit back." And I'm like, "All right, what do you guys say, Dad? They're gonna come back from commercial anytime, so let's go." But he was the one who kind of planted the seed. He was like, I know you. Whenever I ask, what do you want to be? You always say these entertainment things, but I see you more um, engaged and more involved with wrestling. And he's like, have you really given that thought? Like, that might be something that you want to pursue. And I was just like, I don't think I could go in that ring and do it. And so my dad just sat up there and was like, he was like, well, son, you never know until you try. And he's like, if you never want to go through life um, with a what if, in the back of your mind. And so that festered with me for quite a while. And please keep in mind that this is my senior year, actually, and that I'm in high school and already starting to look at like film schools and stuff like that. So, yeah, he throws that grenade and then walks away. And so I'm just sitting here for weeks while everybody else is like, coming up and talking about what colleges they got accepted to. Like, I'm also now find myself on the computer looking up the nearest wrestling school that I can attend and afford to train at. So I wound up finding Windy City Pro Wrestling, which was at the time getting ready to go in its 16th year of establishment. And ironically, who would take me to go visit the school was my dad. And so Sam DeSero, who was the owner of that training facility, sits down with the two of us and explains like the processes, the ins, the outs, what to expect from his school, what we can get out of it and stuff like that. And so he's like he lists out the prices of like what can we afford if you pay this amount. You don't have to pay like dues for monthly dues or anything like that. And once we got through that whole process, like I just remember leaving and my dad's just looking at me. He's like, your jaw like dropped the entire time that we were in there. You see the studio lights and just like looking at the ring, like I want to get in there so bad. So my dad was just like, so what are you thinking? After hearing, you know, all what goes into it, and I just remember looking at him like, I want to do it. I want to go in there and I want to prove something to myself. I want to see if I can hang. He was like, all right, well, we're gonna do this plan, but also, just keep in mind you're still gonna go to school. So I didn't get out of that. Uh, you're gonna have a lot of workload on it, but just remember, uh, this is I remember him telling me this, and I still say this to this day. He was like, only thing I want you to do is I want you to stay humble and stay hungry, and everything that you do, like, do your training, if it's film, if it's directing, or if it's the wrestling, you remember to stay humble and you stay hungry for, and get as much out of everything as you possibly can. So my dad is actually the fuel that ignited, the rocket going forward, more so than anybody than in my entire life. You know, he was the driving force, and so I'm eternally grateful for that.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, my question for you is: so you did wrestling school and you also went to school at the same time? You did both?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So, what school did you attend while you were doing wrestling training?
So I started off with South Suburban College, and then I did Columbia College.
Wow, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So, you were wise enough to do both, right? So you got your fallback, and you've got your main plan at the same time.
Yes, it wasn't easy, but
Oh,
yes.
no, I'm sure it was not easy at all. Yeah, you're killing yourself mentally and physically at the same time. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was like there were many days again that whole contemplating life, like what am I doing? But I feel you got to have some rainy days to appreciate the sunny ones. So
Oh yeah, definitely. So, I guess how was the training? Pretty grueling, or was it something that you could obviously see the light at the end of the tunnel?
so going into the training, the first week was utter hell. Like like doing because I did cross country and track star uh for my high school career. So I was used to doing things that just like made you faster and like, sort of training like an athlete. Like I think I lifted weights. I was into weights, but I wasn't into them like how I'm into them now. And so when it came time to like, really showing off strength against like guys that were already, built like brick houses, I was like, okay, this is kind of crazy. Getting hit with like a clothesline or getting slammed is like, oh my God, this is, you know. But so the first week was pretty much hell, and like the trainer at the end of the week told me, he was like, so how do you feel? And I gotta say, I gotta tell you, I'm sore as fuck, like like I'm just like I'm really having a hard time, even thinking about if this is for me. And he's just like, well, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home tonight and really really put your really put some thought into this. Like, if this is something you want, then you better come back next week harder and ready to train your ass off. Because if not, don't waste my time. Like, not trying to, again, not he, I and I realize this to this day. Like, he wasn't trying to be a dick to me. He was just trying to light a fire. He wanted to see something. Um, he saw something in me that he wanted to bring something out of me. So I made sure that I put in some extra push-ups or ran some extra miles just to get my cardio up and say, okay, I'm gonna let's get in there and let's really throw around. And I gotta say, after that, after that second week, I felt like I was starting to get a little bit of my footing. But at least after a full month, I was already in the game. And so I said, okay, now we're getting someplace. And I made it a point to never miss a practice if I could help. Even if sometimes I was there by myself and it was just me and the trainer. And we did, as they called it then, invisible man training. So it's just me wrestling by myself in the ring, uh, having full matches. He's like, all right, you got X amount of time. I think I had at one point it was like 5 minutes to wrestle the invisible man, and of course the invisible man won because I didn't see him. Um, yeah, just me, just training in there by myself, doing what all that I've been taught taught at up to that point. And so once that was done, it was like, okay, let's move on to the next thing. But I do have to. I was always told to. I was like one of their quick learners, because I was just, I could pick up things, um, pretty quickly when it was given to me, and so I was sort of like on a little bit of a fast track, as I was going, and so I started to surpass like a lot of rookies just because of, well, one, being there all the time kind of helped, and then two, just having that quick learning ability, just to absorb and say, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And then just, constantly, uh, repetition, just, working and becoming a master of my craft. So that really, the training, is one of the best trainings that I could ever hope for. The trainers were excellent. They took their time with me. They were patient. And they really made sure anytime that they felt like I was anytime that I was feeling like I was going to give up on myself, they say, no, 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 you keep going until you've got nothing left. And so, that having that mentality instilled in me really helped me to push past my limits and to know, oh, I can give more, so, even in the ring now, if I feel like I'm getting tired or if I feel hurt, like, you go to that place in your mind to push through it, to get the job done, win, lose, or draw. You give your all, so that, you can be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, well, I definitely, I know I gave it my all and there's nothing left. So I'm very thankful for that training.
Who was there anybody like that you kind of went in with? Any other wrestlers that are maybe still wrestling today?
Oh yeah, Shawn Mulligan, the Irish Car Bomb. We wrestle out of a few promotions of Southland Championship Wrestling, Chicago Style Wrestling. Uh, I believe, well, I was exiting Resistance Pro. He was just coming in. But one guy in particular, Isaiah Velasquez, he now is, the ace of freelance. He's been doing his thing. We sort of started at the same time, and we started our own little niche of coming to practice, and just like the trainers were pushing us, we were pushing each other to make sure, like, hey man, this week let's make sure that let's get XYZ down so that we can move on, and then because we were all working towards that first match, being able to either wrestling each other or getting the call up to wrestle on one of the main shows, wrestle one of the veterans, or heck, who will wrestle a guest that they decide to bring in, which me and Isaiah, we actually got to on one of their big, I guess would be their sort of WrestleMania, for the company, for Windy City, when we wound up wrestling in a triple threat match against Petey Williams when he was hot in the X Division as X Division champion, just when TNA started to really hit the scene, and on the early years of that. So that was a very fun match. I do not recommend anybody taking the Canadian Destroyer.
Duly noted.
It is painful, and holy shit, does that just it turns you inside and out. My God. So yeah, that was actually probably too like the first time I actually got my bell rung, and I just remember being helped to the back, and then they were like, "Hey, do you remember any part of the match?" I'm like, I remember everything up until the Canadian Destroyer. After that, it's a total blank. Like, who won again? And so they're just like, "Oh yeah, you lost." I was like, "Damn." So But Petey's still a nice guy, so he came up and said, "Hey man, great match," and I was like, "Yeah, you too, buddy, you too."
You knocked me out, but yeah, it was a great match.
Yeah, you knocked me out with that Canadian Destroyer, but it was a great match. As I sit there with, the Krispy Kreme look in my eyes all glazed over, like, yeah, man, great match, bro. Yeah, yeah. We just go to this hospital now.
So who was your first match ever, and who was it against, and how did it go?
So my first match ever happened to be the company's lightweight champion. At the time his name was Justin Adams. That day went about as rookies. Of course, we report early to help set up the ring, get everything set up for the show, and I guess his opponent wasn't able to make it that night, so I just remember seeing a bunch of the veterans like go off in the background, and they're all just sort of looking at me and Isaiah and a couple other rookies, and they got their hands covered over their faces and their mouths, and they're just looking like whispering, and we're just like, okay, what the hell are they whispering about? And so the trainer Hunter Payne calls me over and he says, "Hey, look, we've been talking and discussing. Justin Adams' opponent isn't going to show up. He's not going to be able to make it tonight. So we were thinking that we would put you in its place for the lightweight championship." And immediately, I had that roller coaster feel, where just as the roller coaster is going up, and just before you get ready to feel that first dip, like your whole body, like just it feels like your soul is just leaving you, like just like that deep breath. But I'm trying to put on this this front, like, okay, like so this is really happening. And as he was like, do you feel like you're ready? I was like, do you feel like I'm ready? And he was just like, "You'll be fine, kids," and walks away. Meanwhile, I'm just sweating bullets because I'm just like, this is going to be in front of a live crowd, which it was. It was like a huge sellout because they were also doing like a fundraiser thing. And so the place is packed, and I hear the crowd just, they want wrestling, they want action, they want entertainment. And I'm just like, this is my first match to wrestle in front of a live crowd. And, all through the night, people are saying, "Hey, kid, you good? You good?" And I'm just like, yeah. Inside, no.
Now I gotta ask, where's your dad at this point?
My dad actually, he was trying to come to that one, but he couldn't get off of work. But I called him beforehand, and I told him, I was like, "Dad, they're giving me my first shot tonight." And he's like, he asked the same thing. He was just like, "Well, how do you feel? You ready?" I was like, "Hell no." Like, but I can't tell the trainers that. He was like, "What are you nervous about?" I said, "Well, I've been doing good in practice, but if I go there and but there's not, it's just the boys, there's no audience there. This is live. This is happening." He's like, "Well, you put in all this work now. All you have to do is just go out there and apply it. You've waited your whole life for this moment. You've been watching the wrestling. You've invested so much into it. Just go out there and be yourself and have fun." And so and we left the conversation. He was like, "Oh, I forget, of course, the father rule, and make sure that you be safe." But we left the conversation there. And I think that was the call that I needed, because then afterwards it's like a weight just like lifted off the shoulder, and like able to go out there and really just get the crowd involved. I think there was a guy with a megaphone chanting, because I didn't have a cool name, so I decided to call myself Blaze. Terrible. terrible idea, but they were just like, well, what do you want to call yourself? Let's just go with Blaze. It sounds cool to me. I'm just gonna go with it. But the guy with the megaphone was super awesome because he got the whole Blaze chant help get the Blaze chant going for me. So I didn't win the match, but I certainly had a lot of fans walk up after me afterwards and tell me what a great job it was and how entertaining it was. And so from that match alone, I knew that I was on the right path to something, to doing something special. And so yeah, I was very thankful for that match because it brought a lot out of me and it sort of helped me get over my fears relatively quickly. So super fun match.
So, how did you get hooked up with Cara and Resistance Pro?
So when it comes to Chikara, I was actually a part of the group, the Soul Touchers. We had just sort of established ourselves a little bit here in the Midwest, and we were booked for an IWA Mid-South show. And so so we're getting ready to go out, and per the Soul Touchers entrance at the time, we're cranking to that Soldier Boy, that Superman. But unbeknownst to us, the owner of Chikara was in the crowd, and we do our match, and we get dressed, and we're looking to go watch the rest of the show. Well, Mike Quackenbush had saw us and said, "Hey, can I talk to you guys for a second?" And so he calls us all out there, and he's meeting outside, and he says, "Hey, you guys are one of the most entertaining and charismatic factions I've seen in a really long time." And he informed us that he had this show, that he hosts every year, the King of Trios. And he was like, "I really want you guys to be a part of it." And so he invites us to do King of Trios. It's actually the first time that we're doing it. And he's like, "Yeah, come out for King of Trios and let's show the crowd what you got." So we go out to King of Trios. First match went well, but it was our second match with Gran Akuma, I think Icarus, and I think Chuck Taylor. We wrestled, but who were calling themselves Fist at the time. It was our match with them that really won over the audience and got the entire old ECW arena on their feet, just asking for us to please, chanting, "Please come back, please come back." And so Chikara, for when we got invited to King of Trios, really put the Soul Touchers on the map. And it really helped us arrive on the scene. So then everybody wanted a piece of the Soul Touchers at the time. And so we were pretty much just going everywhere. And as far as Resistance Pros goes, I guess the same, it was sort of like the same story, except this time it was more individual for me because Billy Corgan had saw a couple matches that I had done and saw me wrestle and saw the reaction and connection I would get with the people. And so he sort of pulled me aside and, he said, there's a lot of star power in you, and quality. And he was one that would always tell me, like, with the right push, I think you could be a major player. You just need the right person to back you. You just need the right push and be placed in the right matches. And I want to help you do that. And he had a very unique eye on the business. Still does to this day. For booking talent and for helping talent, sort of think outside the box. And so Resistance Pro was fun because I felt like I was always wrestling uh, a different style and almost having a different mindset in every match because all the people who I would wrestle, heavyweight, super junior, or it was all versatile, and it sort of had to make me move and react and perform in different situations that also uh, made me connect to the fans in a different way that they started to really like. And so during Resistance Pro, me and Billy Corgan, we actually became, which I would never in a million years think that I could call Billy Corgan one of my good friends. I mean, so um, yeah, he was definitely a catalyst too that helped push me to where I need to be to get really higher up on the scene.
So you're telling me you're just in the back. This is the way I'm kind of taking this, minding your own business, and all of a sudden Billy Corgan walks up to you and just starts talking to you. Is that kind of how you met him?
Because I met him because we would talk. I mean, you walk in, you say like, hey, how are you doing, Billy Corgan? And like, he on show days, like the guys that own they're busy putting on trying to get the show ready and make sure everything goes off without a hitch, checking on the sound guy, checking on this, checking on that, checking on this. So rarely it's just like, okay, yeah, shake the guy's hand and then like you move on. But Billy, after watching one of my matches and coming up, because I would always ask, I was like, hey, thank the promoter for the opportunity, and feel free, like if ever they're in the area, if they're ever putting on another show, just keep me in mind for I'd love to come back and do it. And just as I get ready to walk off, that's when he's like, hey, and he sort of pulls me back and he wants to talk to me. So I was like, oh, okay. So because most of the time it's just like, hey, I want to talk to you. It's like, fuck, what did I do? Like, gonna get yelled at? Did somebody get hurt? Did something not go as planned? So, but no, he was just like, he made sure like to take down my number. And he made sure he's like, all right, I want you to stay in touch. I was like, oh, well, will do. Thank you, sir. So, but again, not in a million years did I think I, was going to get the push from Billy that I did, and still get to talk to on like a regular basis. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no kidding. And it's just crazy to think that him being a rock star would just have this love for professional wrestling and start his own company that was getting rave reviews at the time as well.
Oh, I know, and it dates back even further than that because I just remember he was showing me like old clips that he had, like little segments he did in ECW and just like other indie promotions, and I was like, damn, I I did not know how how huge of a fan and how involved he was with the business. So that was a huge surprise to me because I just thought, at the time, oh, Resistance Pro is, that's the first time he's fallen in love with it. And it's like, no, he's got years of lineage to go back on. I was like, wow, well, it showed me something. So when the man says he's got an eye for talent, you can trust that. So
yeah. So I mean, okay. So like once you found out that Billy was going to start working with Impact Wrestling, was there kind of like, hey, there might be an opportunity there, and is that kind of what came from that?
Well, actually, the funny thing was that, and this is probably the, everything happens for a reason. And this situation in particular really hits home for me because, ironically, I had just found out after a WWE. I just got done having a WWE tryout, and I thought it went really well, but I got so I'm waiting for that to get that letter of whether I've been accepted or that whole rejection letter saying, hey, not now, kid, or something like that. So I wind up getting that letter. And so I am just, I don't want to say I went into a depression, but I definitely, I definitely was like not feeling it. It was probably at one of my lower points of wrestling because I was just like, man, like I went in there, I gave it my all. I showed everything from charisma to athleticism to everything that you could want in a superstar, and they still told me no. So I'm just like, what is it that I got to do? Um, uh, so I'm just like, I kind of like, you know, put everything on hold. Like I didn't want to work out. Uh, I didn't want to really wrestle because I was just like, man, if I'm just spinning my wheels, so I'm just like, I'm contemplating a lot of stuff. Well, uh, and then all of a sudden I get the call from Billy, and that's when he tells me, he has just gotten in with Impact Wrestling, and he says, "Hey, I showed one of your old matches of me wrestling Al Snow to the booking board, and they said they want to bring you in for a tryout." Um, he says the only catch is that you got to pay for your flight, and you find your own lodge, hotel, or stay with a friend, which I did. Um, but he says if you get down here and impress them and show them what I see, you might have an in over here. So um, so I'm like, yeah, we can try it. We can try to top. I can try to see if I can make that happen. Now, keep in mind, my wife is pregnant at the time, so I'm also thinking about that because I'm just like, well, it's one of those. What if she goes early? And here I am just going on a whim. Like I'm not even sure. I just went to one of the number one promotion in the world today and gave my all. Got great reviews, and they still told me no. Now I'm gonna go to Impact, and my wife can pop. I'm not sure. Uh, I'm coming out of money. There's a lot of maybes going on around here, and so my wife was just like, hey, you know, you you want to make sure that if if it doesn't happen, at least you can say that you did it. So I wind up going, paying the fare, doing my thing, and then just going into the tryout, meeting everybody from the EC3, DJZ, super. Like, everybody was super nice down there. It was like really refreshing and like sort of just already like lifting the spirits. And Billy was, he let me know when I was going to get my tryout and when I'd be given the opportunity to get looked at. And so I'm getting ready, and I go do my tryout. Great match with Braxton Sutter, uh, who at the time had just gotten signed like the day before my tryout. So after we do our match. Shane Helms runs up and says, "Hey, catch your breath real quick, kid, and then cut this promo and tell us about yourself." So I'm in the ring cutting this promo, pulling out some Chris Tucker mixed with Michael Jackson. Everybody like dying laughing. Like it is hysterical. EC3 came up there and said, gave me super props to it. So it was super funny. Uh, but I just expected just to like, okay, Billy's like giving me the thumbs up, you know, behind everybody. He's super tall, so I was just like, yes. So that's a positive. I at least made Billy look good. Uh, from the reactions that I was getting, and never expecting anything but to say like, okay, well, we'll review your stuff, we'll talk about it, and I'll hear from them later. Never in a million years did I think that I would get signed that day. They said, "Hey kid, when you got a second, go towel off and then come see us up front." So again, start thinking like, shit. Are they gonna tell me, "Hey kid, you got something special, but just not now," or you get to be like, "Hey, you totally shit the bed. We can't do anything with you, but thanks for trying." So, but no, they told me you did all the right stuff. I think with a little bit more, you know, if somebody gives you the opportunity to, get on TV, I think you're gonna be a major star, and you just need that TV experience. So we want to be that place for you to get that experience. So if you're wanting to, we'd like to sign you to a deal. And I am just sitting there, just like, wait, what? Like, are you guys joking right now? Is this a camera? He's like, no, this is not a joke. What do you say? So immediately, I haven't even signed anything yet. I'm like just shaking his hand like like a cartoon character, just rapidly like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. He's like, all right, can I have my hand back? And I was like, I'm sorry. So, and it was at that moment I at least got some validation. That at least for the most part, the hard work and that I've been putting into it, like, really paid off. And Billy came up afterwards. I told Billy, and Billy immediately, just like, which he is not a hugger, but he did hug me that day. So I was like super thrilled. So I was like, thank you so much. So, best weekend ever. So.
Yeah, so it was announced on March 24th, 2016, that you signed with Impact Wrestling, but it wasn't until August 8th that you made your debut, or at least on TV that was. What was the whole, after the signing, what took so long for you to finally debut?
Well, there was a lot of changing of the guards, because, a lot of the behind the scenes there in the office, unbeknownst to me, Dixie was already planning her way out, and I guess Billy was planning to move further up the company, and so a lot of it was like they were getting new writers. They were seeing like, okay, trying to evaluate each individual to see where they can take in the company, and just it was just like a lot of changes going on. So I felt like it was like a shelf. It's like, hey, we're gonna get to you in a second, but we got to take care of ABC relatively quick before we can move on to you. So basically, so I did like a lot of dark matches for them before actually having that television debut, which I got a lot of positive feedback, and then I did a few of their one night onlys, for their pay-per-views and stuff. So I think that was like starting to help get the exposure that I was helping look for. But until like some of the changing of the guards would sort of like slow down, and then they can take a look at and see what they had. I think that was like sort of like the major setback, was just of just sort of just like waiting. Okay, all right, what are we doing here, guys? Are we done yet? No. Okay, all right. I'll be here if you need me. Just but no,
Yeah.
I think the thing though still was I was still able to take indie bookings, which I loved, because I thought all of that was going to stop, because there was a lot of places that I really enjoyed working at, and I was just like, I don't want to really like leave. And they're just like, oh no, you can by all means take your indie bookings and just make us a top priority when it's time to. I was like, oh, for sure, So that was pretty cool, and that was great.
Yeah, at least if they're not going to use you at that point, then at least you got something to do in the meantime until they can, figure it out. I mean, I remember watching that one night only extravaganza, and you cut a really funny promo. I really enjoyed it, and I liked your match against Mandrews. I thought it was really good, and I thought there was a lot of potential there. I guess the only thing was, like, I was surprised that you went into the X division, because I mean, you are correct me if I'm wrong, you're 6'4",
yes.
You're 6'4", 250. I
yes.
mean, that's
So at the time, because I get asked this a lot, like, why did they book you in the X division? At the time when Billy Corgan had his stint there, it was through my understanding that we were sort of reinventing the wheel of, I don't know, you remember how Samoa Joe kind of sort of came into the fold, where here's this heavyweight, and he's pretty much just going to come into the, he's going to beat up the X Division guys, and he's going to show the X Division guys that, hey, you smaller individuals aren't the only ones that can do the X Division moves. So I believe that was the main point for me, was that, because Billy's always been a fan of, like, my height and my size, but still able to do like this fast-paced wrestling match. He's like, that's awesome. That's perfect. That's what they need, And I think it's something different. It's something old, but it'll be something new. Like, if we reinvent it, obviously not go directly the way of Samoa Joe, but in that direction. So I think the X Division was a great place to start. But the only problem with that is that you got to get really started with it, and like once the fire starts going, you got to keep it burning. And again, just the changing of the guards really made that sort of difficult and hard to, every time the fire got going, it was like somebody leaving and then somebody new coming in, and it's like, okay, you got to re-explain what's really going on. So after a little while, it's just sort of like, all right, we're kind of beating a dead horse over here, man. So what are we really doing? So, but that was the initial start, was to start in the X Division and just build from there, which was also like fun.
So you debuted at the height of, I say, Billy's power within the company, but when Billy was really running things, that's pretty much when you debuted, correct?
Yeah.
And so from your initial time, from your tryout, and then when you were working with Billy, how was the atmosphere? How was it different from the tryout time to when you transitioned into Billy running the company?
Well, a lot of there was really not a whole lot of I mean, from day one, I felt welcomed in the locker room, and I was just like, this is not what I come to expect, because usually, like, you go to the other promotion and it's sort of like kind of walking on eggshells. Like, you don't want to overstep your boundaries because you might tick off the wrong person. And so you're just sort of, you sort of stay reserved until somebody kind of lets you into the fold and say, yeah, it's okay. You can talk to me, and say, okay, cool. But from day one, when I arrived at Impact, they made me feel right at home. And I was like, this is different. This is way different than what I'm normally used to. And they were just like, nah, man, it's just like everybody just wants to, everybody wants to work, have fun. And, we only, I guess they had the mentality of like, the only way we all make it is together. And so everybody here, does their part, and we all eat, basically. So I was just like, wow, that is awesome. But and it was from that atmosphere that I got to, learn a lot from a lot of the talent as far as like how different I guess indie wrestling is from actually working with television. So it really helped me learn quickly, um, and transition the way I needed to transition and not get super lost, while being out there, and like there's this huge camera in my face, um, as opposed to somebody with a smaller camera, you can barely even see the individual there. Whereas they have this ginormous TV camera, 3 inches from your nose and everything, and it's just like, oh, you're right there. Well, hello, people watching at home. You know, the locker room was really, really fun. I still hear that it's fun even now. So I think they got a great locker room feel and atmosphere.
Yeah, I think like if you were hired now, I think it would probably be a better situation because I think it's a little more stable and there's not a bunch of turnover, at the end. I mean, you came in at one of the craziest time periods, I would think.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
you just heard so many different people had their hands in it, and you just didn't know who was going to come out, who was going to own it at the end of the day. I mean, that had to been, I'm sure all you guys heard it too.
oh yeah. Well, for me, it's just like, I was like, damn, I just got hired, but I can only, guys and women who've been there for years on end were just like, well, shoot, are we out of a job, or is Impact still running, or who's taking over? You know, and I just remember getting like those emails or letters of, hey, there's going to be a talent meeting, and it's just like, okay, is this the day that we find out that the doors are closing? And I was like, I just got hired, no. And there's this is your new president, like. And the crazy thing is, I'm just sitting. I'm just sitting there. I'm just like, wow. What if elections like work like this? Like, what if the president just walks in there and just like, hey, I'm not. I'm gonna just pass the torch on to him, and just walks off and leaves, and there's somebody else is like, I'm like, man, we need to have elections like this, man. Like, you know, just make that easy transition, right? Just, you think you can do better, and so you just take the reins like that. It's like, all right, this is awesome. So yeah, totally on pins and needles though, for sure.
I mean, and you guys were doing the whole. There was like a new concept to Impact. It was the Team X Gold, which I thought was interesting. I don't know, if the full vision was ever really realized, but I mean, how was it competing in those Team X Gold matches?
It was a lot of fun. It was something different, which sometimes I like to do because I just like to, it's just another way for the fans to see a different side to a wrestler's ability and their character. So I thought when we started doing the Team X Gold, I thought that I was like, wow, this is gonna be neat. I thought, there'd probably be even more opportunities to wrestle international superstars that might want to join in, like, Team Mexico comes in and we're wrestling them, or Team Japan or something like that, and it just builds upon it. But I don't think that it got the proper traction that it was like looking for. And so when Team X Gold sort of like stopped, I was just like, okay, well, we'll see where this goes from here. But man, I actually liked it because it was one of the. I just remember being told how actually huge I had gotten, standing in the ring, in the middle of the ring, looking eye to eye with the monster Abyss, and everybody's like, whoa. Like, we knew you were tall, and we knew you had size to you, but we didn't know that tall and that much size. So a lot of the fans were just chanting like, "Here we go!" And they just came up on their feet. So I was like, Team X Go was really fun.
And you mentioned Abyss. A lot of wrestlers that we've talked to always mention he's kind of like a locker room leader, especially around that time. How was your experience with working with Abyss?
Abyss was one of my biggest advocates there. Always pushing for me, always willing to give me advice, because I would notoriously go up to him and just say, "What do you think of this? What do you think of that? How was this? How was that?" And not one time did he ever say, "You know what, F off, kid, like I'm busy," or something like that. He always took time to help me get better and provide the best advice. He was, I remember saying like, "Hey, it's I'm just sort of finding my way into this new big man role. Like, I've been sort of like a light heavyweight most of my career. So now that I can actually call myself a heavyweight, I'm got any tips for me?" And like, direction. He's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Then let me talk to you. And he would drop some stellar knowledge on me. And so I was like very appreciative of that. But just an overall great human being, super kind, knowledgeable. Like, he was really great to work with, and grateful for the time that I had with him, to be able to do that.
So, yeah, I want to say it was right after the final deletion episode, or maybe it was the tag team Apocalyptico. I think it was right there. We kind of heard the rumblings that Dixie was leaving, and it kind of seemed Anthem Sports was kind of taking over. What was the first thing you heard that made that official? That okay, Billy's not going to get the company, Anthem Sports is taking over, and Dixie's out of the picture.
I think once, because that was another talent meeting one. After the talent meeting, I sort of texted. I texted Billy. I said, "Hey, asking him, does he have time to talk, or like, can he talk, or with all these like agreements and stuff like that?" And I just said, "Hey, are you officially out, or are you taking like, you're taking a lesser role within the company?" So like, just asking him, straight up what's going on. And he told me right then and there, he was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna take my leave from Impact." And I was just like, "Okay." So, not that I was actually dependent on him keeping me there, like, but I was just wanted to know, so like, where do I go from here? Because a lot of the plans were coming from him. Because he was like, "Well, let's do this with Marshe," and he was just like, "Well, he was just, you keep doing you, and keep bouncing ideas off of him, and keep keep bouncing ideas off of him, and just like keep going." But I know a lot of people will sit up there and say like, you I know a lot of people would sit up there and say like, "Oh, if Billy leaves, like, are you gonna leave too?" But he was like one that's like, "No, you stay there. Just just keep going, and doing what brought you to the dance." He was like, I just showed you the door. You were the one to walk through it." So, but when Billy left, like, I actually, there were a lot of other producers that I have became close with, and were really wanting to push for me too. So it was just like a little bit of a transition, but I still have people rooting for me and backing me up and wanting to help me get that start to put me where I wanted to go.
So what do you think happened at that point that led to your release, and when you were released, who contacted you?
It was more or less, it was always like the changing of the guard. Like, I think that's what led to the big release, because it was, no, there was like really like no direction. Like it was like, well, let's go here, let's start there, let's do this. And um when it's, you can only do that for so long, and then after a while it's just like, well, I don't want my brand to hurt. I don't want to sit up there and just be like, okay, well, if there's no if if there's no story, or if there's no direction as of now because it's so crazy, then uh, why don't I take my leave, and then maybe we can revisit it when things have sort of, like sort of like settled down, because there's like a lot going on. Um, Obviously, there's more so behind the scenes than I actually knew. So I think that's what led to the release happening.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And you were brought in by Billy, and your plans were coming from Billy. Everybody changes over at one time, and it was a terrible period of time for the company. You were probably fortunate, to be honest with you, to get out of that mess, at least temporarily. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, and it wasn't like it was like a bad, one of those like bad breakups, like you'll never work for us again or something like that. It was just like, they admitted themselves, like, hey, we got some stuff that we got to work on to, we got some stuff to fix. And it was just like, okay, well, don't know when, this wrestling, you never say never. So, but it's just like, there's always a possibility of coming back. Just, it has to be one of those right settings, right notions. But I think now it's a little bit better. It's far better than what it was, from being back there. So, but I am thankful for the time that I did have there, because I think I just grew exponentially as a performer, uh, for that little time stint that I was there, and getting to work with some world-class athletes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but your last match was against Mahabali Shira, and you got the victory, correct?
Yes.
So you went out with a positive momentum.
I'm going out with a victory. I'm going out with a bang.
That's right.
I'm not, they're not pinning me and letting me get away with it. So,
So I guess, what was your favorite match the whole time you were there?
My favorite match was actually working. Ooh, that's a tough one, because I loved wrestling with Eddie Edwards, from the American Wolves. He was great to work with. Moose, although that power bomb, oh my god, oh, that man is a beast. He is like super strong. But really, all the matches, man, were super fun. Like, it's always hard to pick one of my absolute favorite matches, because I like to, if I go out there, man, and I have fun, and nobody gets super hurt, I'm able to return to my family healthy and able to go out there and do it again. Like, to me, that's my favorite match, when it's like, okay, that was fun, now let's do it again. Like, all those type of matches are my favorite matches.
I mean, I do remember that Moose match, and I was happy that you were getting a title shot at the Grand Championship at that time, and it was just like, I just feel like they could have done so much more, and it just never came to be.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah, but hey, like I said, like, it's just it's just one of those things. But sometimes you kind of got to go away and then come back, and next thing you know, you're 10 times bigger than when you first got there. So you never say never, because I often sometimes I get asked by fans like, "Hey, would you ever go back to Impact, or is that even a possibility?" It's like, well, when I left, the door is always open. So at this point in time, I'm just staying prepared and ready for any opportunity that really comes my way, whether it's Impact, AEW, any place at this point. Uh, I just want to get back in the game and basically keep moving forward.
And I can tell you that the Impact fans, we'd love to have you back. Personally, I would love to see you and Killer Cross go head to head, toe to toe. I think that would be an exceptional matchup.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Killer Cross's stuff, and I was thinking the same thing. As like, I would just love to have a match with Killer Cross, and like a lot of the new guys I've seen uh, stepping up, stepping up and coming up in the scene, and especially in Impact. And I'm just like, ooh, that would really be like I'd like to see something like that happen. Like, how can we make this happen? Just let's see who we face.
Now, you've mentioned, your relationship with Billy Corgan, and obviously Billy is in the process, the slow but very carefully planned process of rekindling the NWA, which honestly is everybody's favorite promotion. They might not realize it, but it is. What are your thoughts about working with Billy and the NWA at some point in the future?
I'm very open to it. I would love to work with Billy and the NWA if should the opportunity arise. I know he's doing his stuff, and he's got his music, and he's still trying to grind and rekindle and bring back that flame for the NWA. I think they've done an awesome job, phenomenal job actually, for what they've definitely put a lot of eyes back on observing the NWA with new championships, and they bringing back Jazz for the women's championship, and I think when the 10 pounds of gold is really sparked something, and Billy's always been about giving opportunities to those that haven't always gotten the opportunities to really showcase what they can do. So again, if the opportunity arrives and if the stars align, like, I'm there. So just gotta be ready for the opportunity should it arrive.
And the one thing about Impact that they're doing is they're doing these Twitch shows, and they're doing the one night only shows, and it seems like they're pairing up with an independent promotion. And I keep checking, but they don't have any Chicago promotions as of right now. But what's the main promotion you're working out of currently?
The main promotions that I work out of now are I work out of Chicago Style Wrestling, Southland Championship Wrestling, Global Pro Wrestling. They sprang up. This will be their their second year being up, but they've got a great they built a pretty great fan base. A lot of times there's been times to do AAW, but there's always a scheduling conflict, so it's so we'll see if that ever happens. Definitely different than creative opinions, and when you wrestle too many places. So, but Free Nights Underground. But there's been a lot more promotions that have been popping up, more so on the East Coast and the West Coast, that I would love to expand my reach. And at some point, I'm hoping to get over and wrestle in Japan. I mean, Japan wrestling is pretty hot right now. I know New Japan Wrestling is phenomenal. Years ago, you probably wouldn't even hear fans like, "What is New Japan Wrestling? Like, what is that?" But now that's thanks to superstars like Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks and those guys, and AJ Styles, like list goes on. New Japan is just as popular in the States as it is, I'm sure, over there. But I would love to get over to Japan and just really, 'cause I know they love big heavyweights over there. So it's like, oh wow, different audience and a different setting. And I think I can really, really shine well if given the chance. So.
And I think it really just kind of comes down to you deserve that chance. I think there's so many different promotions out there now. It's probably one of the best times to be a wrestler because there's so many different places to work.
Yeah,
I really hope that in the future we're going to see you on some television screen of ours, whether that be AEW or Impact or WWE or wherever.
Fingers crossed, right?
That's right. That's right. But Marshe, thanks for coming on. This interview has been a blast. Your story has been great, and I'm going to venture that we haven't seen the best of Marshe Rockett yet.
Yeah, that's right, baby. Not till you see me all day. No.
So, can we get a whoop-de-whoop?
Oh, whoop whoop! Oh yeah, man. Let's go in. We can do that. Whoop whoop all day, baby.
There it is. Impact, dude.
Man, this was a great time. Marshe Rockett, you are the man. Fantastic interview, fantastic stories. It's just a great listen. Really grateful to be a part of it, and wish you all the luck in the future. Looking very forward to seeing you back on Impact Wrestling, whether that's where you want to be or not, because damn it, that's where we want you.
Man, I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.